This content is for educational and informational purposes only and is not medical advice, a diagnosis, or treatment.
Welcome to Let's Talk Holistic Hope. I'm your host, Rochelle Wilson, a naturopath and wellness expert. And on this show, we get to the root of chronic illness and nagging symptoms with an enlightening mix of functional medicine, biblical wisdom, and straight-up common sense. Each week, I'll break down the mystery of your fatigue, brain fog, gut drama, weight gain, and hormone chaos, and show you simple ways to heal in body, mind, and spirit. Because God didn't design you to live stuck in survival mode. Grab your lemon water, friend. Let's get into today's episode. You know what's really interesting? Your body is having about 1 million conversations with itself right now, and you have absolutely no idea any of it is happening. While you're sitting there listening to this, your cells are sending messages back and forth. Your tissues are coordinating repair, and your brain is signaling your gut. Your gut is signaling back. And somehow, in the middle of all that beautifully complex communication, we've started to wonder if maybe we should just inject ourselves with something to make it work better. And I get it. I really do. There are some really great things about it. But I think before we hand the microphone over to a peptide, we need to understand who's actually been doing the talking all along. Hey friends, welcome back to Let's Talk Holistic Hope. I'm your host, Dr. Rochelle Wilson, and around here we talk about real solutions for chronic symptoms through the lens of spirit, mind, and body. Because I really do believe healing was never meant to be one-dimensional. We weren't designed to be a list of symptoms to manage or a body part to fix. We were designed as whole people. And the more I do this work, the more convinced I am that real, lasting healing only happens when we honor all three of those layers at the same time. And today, we are diving into something that has absolutely taken over the wellness world: peptides. You've seen the headlines. You've probably even seen the influencers. You've definitely seen the before and after photos. Peptides are everywhere right now. They're being talked about for weight loss, for healing injuries faster, for sharper brain function, for skin, for hair, for energy, for pretty much anything you can think of. And depending on who you listen to, peptides are either the greatest medical breakthrough of our generation, or they're the next big thing we're all going to regret in 10 years. So, I wanted to actually sit down today and have a real conversation about what they are, what they're not, where they shine, and where people get themselves into trouble, and how all of this fits into the bigger picture of how God designed our bodies to function in the first place. Because I think when you understand the design, the conversation about peptides actually gets so much clearer. Now, before we go any further, I want to do something I've been trying to do more of lately, which is bridge our episodes together. Because none of this stuff exists in a vacuum. Last week, we spent a lot of time talking about blood sugar, and I told you that metabolic health is kind of the unsexy foundation underneath almost every chronic symptom that we deal with. And I want to bring that thread forward into what we're talking about today. Because here's the thing. Peptides are an advanced tool. They really are. And one of the biggest mistakes I see people make, and I mean really intelligent, motivated, doing all the things people, is reaching for the advanced tool while the foundation is still cracked underneath them. It's like buying a Tesla and parking it in a garage with no electricity. The car is incredible. It's just not going to do what it was designed to do if the basics aren't in place. So as we go through this conversation today, I want you to keep that in the back of your mind. Blood sugar, sleep, stress, nutrient status. That's what I call the soil. Peptides are the seed. And we'll come back to that in a little bit. So let's actually talk about what peptides are. And I want to do this without making your eyes glaze over, because I know the second somebody starts throwing around words like amino acids and signaling molecules, half the audience mentally checks out, and the other half starts panicking that they need to go take a biology refresher course. So let's just keep it real simple. A peptide is a short chain of amino acids. That's it. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. And when you string a few of them together, usually somewhere between 2 and 50, you get a peptide. String a lot more of them together, and you've got a full protein. So peptides are basically little protein fragments, and they exist all throughout your body. They do all kinds of jobs. But here is the part that I think gets completely lost in the hype, and I want you to really hear this. Peptides are not foreign. Peptides are not some lab-made chemical that we've invented to hack the body. Peptides are how your body already talks to itself. Every single second of every single day, your body is using peptides as messengers, telling cells when to grow, when to repair, when to release a hormone, when to calm down inflammation, when to make you feel hungry, when to make you feel full, and when to fall asleep, when to wake up. Peptides are the text messages of the human body. And when scientists started learning how to identify these messengers and even recreate some of them in a lab, what they were really doing was learning the language your body has been speaking fluently since the moment you were knit together in your mother's womb. And honestly, this is one of those moments where I just have to pause and marvel a little bit. Because Psalm 139 says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I don't know about you, but the more I learn about how the body actually works, the more I'm absolutely convinced that that verse wasn't just poetic exaggeration. I believe that was a literal anatomical statement, fearfully and wonderfully made. The level of intricacy in how your cells communicate, the precision of these tiny chains of amino acids carrying exact messages to exactly the right place at exactly the right time. My friend, that is not random. That is not accidental. That is a designer. And I think it's worth saying out loud because we live in a culture that wants to credit science with discovery, as if science invented these things. Let me tell you, science didn't invent peptides. Science discovered peptides. There's a really important difference there. Everything we are now learning to recreate in a lab, God already wrote into the original blueprint. We're just now starting to read the manual. Okay, so with that foundation in place, let's talk about the different categories of peptides that people are actually using and hearing about, because this is where I think a lot of the confusion lives. People hear peptides as if it's one thing, kind of like how people say vitamins, as if all vitamins do the same job. But there are entire families of peptides, and they do really different things in the body. So let's walk through the main ones together. The first family I want to talk about is the healing and repair peptides. And this is where you'll hear names like BPC 157 and TB 500 thrown around. BPC actually stands for Body Protection Compound, which I think is such a beautiful name when you really think about it, because that's exactly what it does. BPC 157 is a peptide that's derived from a protein found in your stomach lining. And what researchers have noticed is that it seems to play a significant role in tissue repair. We're talking about gut lining repair, tendon and ligament healing, muscle recovery, even some support for the nervous system. People who have been dealing with stubborn injuries that just won't quite heal, a torn ligament, a tendon that's been inflamed for 2 years, or a gut that feels like it's been on fire forever. This is often the peptide they end up hearing about. TB500 plays in a similar sandbox. It seems to support the body's ability to regenerate tissue and modulate inflammation, particularly in muscle and connective tissue. And what people describe when these are working well is honestly kind of remarkable. They'll tell you their old shoulder injury that flared up every time they exercise finally calmed down. Or their gut, which had been a daily battle, started to feel quiet for the first time in years. Or their post-workout recovery shortened from days to hours. And I'm not telling you this to sell you on these. I'm telling you because I want you to understand the actual mechanism. That's important. These peptides aren't doing anything magical. They're only amplifying signals that your body was already trying to send. They're saying, hey, repair team, we need you here, and we need you here now. And in a body that has the resources to respond, that signal can be incredibly powerful. In a body that's depleted, exhausted, malnourished, or chronically inflamed, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Then we have the metabolic peptides. And this is the family of peptides that has absolutely exploded into the cultural conversation. This is your GLP-1 family, which includes pharmaceutical names you've definitely heard: Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound. And listen, I'm not here to make this episode about those medications specifically, because that is a whole conversation in itself and probably deserves its own episode. But I do want you to understand what GLP-1 actually is, because the conversation around it has gotten so loud and so polarized that I think people have lost track of the basic biology of it all. GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. And it is a peptide your body naturally produces in your gut after you eat. It's that simple. Its job is to help regulate blood sugar. It also slows down how quickly food leaves your stomach and signals to your brain that you're satisfied. It's a really beautiful, well-designed system. The challenge is that for a lot of people in the modern world, between chronic stress, ultra-processed foods, blood sugar dysregulation, gut inflammation, and just the general state of metabolic chaos, that natural GLP-1 signal has become muted or sluggish. The body is still making it, but the message isn't quite landing the way it was designed to. And so the pharmaceutical version essentially gives the body a much louder, long-lasting version of that same signal. Now, here's where I want to be really honest with you, because I think we've been having a kind of dishonest conversation about this in the wellness world. There are people for whom these medications have been genuinely life-changing, and we should not minimize that. There are also people who jumped on them as a quick fix, ignored every other lifestyle factor, lost weight, then came off, and gained it all back, plus some, because nothing about the foundation actually changed. Both of those things are true at the same time. And I don't think the answer is to demonize the tool. The answer is to be really, really clear about what the tool is and what it isn't. It is a powerful signal. It is not a substitute for healing the body that's supposed to be receiving the signal. And then the third family I want to talk about is what I'd loosely call brain, energy, and mitochondrial support peptides. This is where things get really interesting for people dealing with fatigue and brain fog and mood issues and that vague sense of just not feeling like yourself anymore. There are peptides in this category that seem to support mitochondrial function, which, if you remember from biology class, or maybe just from listening to this podcast, your mitochondria are the little energy factories inside every one of your cells. When they're working well, you have energy and mental clarity and drive, all of it. When they're sluggish or damaged, you feel like you're walking through molasses, no matter how much you sleep. There are also peptides being studied for cognitive function, for neurogenesis, which is just a fancy word for the brain's ability to grow new connections, and for supporting the body's stress response system. And what people often describe when these are working well is that they feel like the lights came back on. The mental clarity returns and the motivation returns. The sense of being present in their own life actually returns. And again, that's not magic. That's a depleted communication system finally getting the support it needed to function the way that it was designed to function. And listen, these are just the peptide families that I wanted to highlight today. But I want you to know there are so many more peptides out there worth talking about. There are peptides for skin and hair and immune support, for sleep, for sexual health, for hormone balance. And we will absolutely circle back and dive into more of them in future episodes, because this conversation is really just getting started. Now, I want to pause here and say something really clearly, because I don't want anyone walking away from this episode thinking I'm anti-peptide, because I'm absolutely not. I want to be on the record about this. I am genuinely a fan of peptides when they are used wisely and in the right context. I have seen them help people in ways that honestly felt almost miraculous. People who had tried everything for years. People who had been written off by conventional medicine. People who were told just to live with their pain or their fatigue or their gut issues forever. And then a well-chosen peptide came alongside the work they were already doing on their foundations, and something finally clicked. Their tissues healed that hadn't actually healed in a decade. Energy came back that had been gone for years. Inflammation that had been screaming finally quieted down. So please don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not telling you peptides are bad or scary or that you shouldn't consider them. In so many cases, I think they're a really beautiful, intelligently designed tool that gives the body a chance to do what it was always meant to do in the first place. What I want you to walk away with is wisdom. And I mean wisdom about when and how, not fear of the tool itself. There's a really big difference between being skeptical of a tool and being skeptical of how a tool is being used. And I always want to land on the second one. Because honestly, I believe peptides are going to be a very huge part of the future of medicine. And I think that's a really, really exciting thing. Okay, so with all of that said, I do still want to talk about where I see people getting this wrong. Because I see it constantly. And I do see it in really smart, really well-intentioned people. I would actually be doing you a huge disservice if we didn't talk about this. The number one mistake is using peptides without fixing the foundation. I cannot tell you how many people I have talked to who are spending hundreds and sometimes thousands of dollars a month on peptides while they're sleeping only 5 hours a night, eating processed food, drinking on the weekends, ignoring chronic stress, and skipping meals all day long. And then they wonder why they're not getting the dramatic results they were promised. Friends, listen to me. A peptide is a signal. If your body doesn't have the raw materials to act on that signal, the signal goes absolutely nowhere. It is like sending a beautifully written work order to a construction crew that has no lumber, no tools, and hasn't slept in 3 days. The instructions are clear. The capacity to execute is not there. This is exactly why I keep harping on the foundations in each episode on this podcast. Sleep, blood sugar, nutrient density, stress management, gut health, movement. That's not the boring stuff you do until you can afford the fun stuff. That is the soil, my friends. And no peptide on earth is going to grow you a healing in soil that hasn't been tended to. I've watched people spend a fortune chasing the next protocol while completely overlooking the fact that they haven't even had a real night's sleep in months. And I say that with so much compassion because I think it's a really human thing to do. We want the shortcut. We want the thing that does the work for us. We've been trained by an entire culture to believe that the answer is always something you can buy, which actually leads me to the second mistake. And it's a more subtle one, but I think it's even more important. People are chasing solutions instead of understanding their bodies. And there's a huge difference between those two things. When you're chasing a solution, You're moving from one supplement to one diet to one protocol to one peptide to the next. And you're essentially treating your body like a problem to be solved. When you're understanding your body, you're slowing down and asking, why is this happening? What is my body trying to communicate to me? What is the root? And those two postures will take you to completely different places. The first one keeps you on a hamster wheel of products and protocols. The second one actually leads you towards healing. And this brings me to what I think is the most important truth in this whole conversation. And I want you to really sit with this one. So get this. Your body must be able to receive the signal. Peptides do not override dysfunction. They support function. Read that again in your head if you need to. They support function. They do not override dysfunction. If your nervous system is locked in fight or flight, if your gut lining is shredded, if your blood sugar is on a roller coaster, if your sleep is destroyed, if your nutrient stores are depleted, adding a powerful signaling molecule into that environment is not going to magically fix things. It might help, it might bring some relief, but it is not going to deliver on the promise people are hoping for because the receiver is broken. And no matter how loud you make the message, if the antenna isn't working, the message doesn't land. And honestly, this is where I think the spiritual layer of this conversation becomes really important. Because I see something in our culture, even in the wellness world, where we are constantly trying to override what God designed instead of aligning with it. We want to just push past our limits instead of listening to them. We want to silence our symptoms instead of asking what they're trying to teach us. We want to engineer ourselves into wellness instead of stewarding the bodies we've been given. And there's something almost spiritually significant about the fact that even the most cutting-edge science on peptides keeps coming back to the same conclusion. The body has to be in a state where it can actually receive what's being offered. The design always wins. We can support it. We can amplify it. We can come alongside it. But we cannot override it. And frankly, I'm not sure we would even want to. There's a verse I keep coming back to in 1 Corinthians where Paul says that our bodies are a temple of the Holy Spirit. And I think we hear that verse and we kind of just nod and move on. But stop for a second. A temple, not a machine, not a project, not a problem to be optimized. A temple is something you tend to, something that you honor, something you take care of with reverence because of who lives there. And I really do believe that when we approach our bodies that way, with reverence instead of frustration, and with curiosity instead of control, we start to make very different decisions. We start to ask different questions. We stop looking for the magic bullet and we start asking what our temple actually needs. So here's where I want to land this whole thing. Peptides are real. They're fascinating. They're a beautiful glimpse into how God designed your body to communicate with itself. And there are absolutely situations where they can be a powerful tool in the right hands at the right time. I'm not anti-peptide at all. In fact, I'm a fan of them. But above all that, what I am is pro-foundation. I'm pro-understanding what you're putting into your body. I'm pro-healing the soil before you plant the seed. And I'm pro-remembering that no matter how advanced our tools become, the original design is still the standard we're working with. The most cutting-edge science in the world is still just trying to learn the language your body has been speaking since the day you were created. So if you're someone who has been considering peptides, or maybe you've already started them and you're wondering why you're not getting the results you hope for, I want to encourage you to zoom out. Ask yourself the foundational questions. How are you sleeping? What does your blood sugar look like across the day? What are you actually eating? How is your nervous system? When is the last time you felt truly rested, Not just collapsed on the couch tired, but actually rested in your spirit. Because those are the questions that will move you forward, with or without a peptide protocol. And the beautiful thing is, when you take care of those foundations, sometimes you find that your body starts producing all the signals it needs all on its own. Imagine that. Before we close out today, I want to pray over you because I know some of you are listening to this in the middle of a really, really hard season. You're tired. You're confused. You've tried a lot of things. You're not sure what to believe anymore. And I just want to lift you up before we end. Father, thank you for the way you designed our bodies. Thank you that every cell, every signal, every silent conversation happening inside us right now is evidence of your wisdom and your care. Lord, for the person who's exhausted from chasing answers, would you give them rest today? For the one who feels like their body has betrayed them, would you remind them that their body is not the enemy? It is a temple you created and you still inhabit. Give us wisdom to know when to use the tools you've allowed us to discover, and humility to remember that you are still the healer. Help us to steward what you've given us with reverence and to trust you with what we don't yet understand. In the mighty name of King Jesus, amen. Here's the question I want to leave you with today. What is one foundation in your life you've been overlooking while you've been searching for the next solution? Just one. Don't try to fix everything all at once. Just notice the one thing your body has been quietly asking for, and start there. That's where the real work begins. That's where the real healing begins. And then I want to give you one more question, but this one isn't for you to figure out on your own. This one is for you to bring to God this week. Find a quiet moment, maybe with your coffee in the morning or before bed at night, and just ask Him this. Lord, what is my body trying to tell me that I haven't been willing to slow down and hear? And then actually let yourself sit in the quiet long enough to listen. Don't rush past it. Don't fill the silence. Because I really believe that the Holy Spirit will meet you in that question if you give Him the space to. Sometimes the answer comes as a memory. Sometimes it comes as a feeling. Oftentimes it comes as a verse that won't leave you alone for the next 3 days. But He will answer. He always does. And whatever He shows you might be the very thing that unlocks the next layer of your healing. If this episode helped you see peptides in a clearer light, or if it reminded you of something you needed to hear today, would you please share it with a friend who might need it too? And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss episode 11, where we're going to take this conversation about cellular communication one step further and talk about NAD, longevity, and the whole anti-aging movement that has everybody spending a fortune on IVs and supplements without really understanding what they're doing or why. We're going to break down what NAD actually is, why your levels naturally decline as you age, and what's hype and what's real in the longevity space, and how to support your cellular energy in a way that honors the body God gave you instead of trying to outsmart the aging process He designed. You don't have to figure this out alone. You can connect with me at www.therenewedhope.com or email me at letstalk@theholistichopepodcast.com. I'll also leave links in the description for more ways to connect. So until next time, friends, keep choosing hope, keep trusting Jesus, and keep healing from the inside out. Ooh, that was good. Thanks for hanging with me today. If this episode brought you clarity or hope, would you do me a quick favor? Take 30 seconds to share it with a friend. Leave a 5-star rating or write a short review. It helps this show reach more people who need real answers too. Want to keep the conversation going? Come hang out with me on Facebook at Renewed Hope Holistic Health. The link's in the show notes. Or better yet, let's talk. Book a free 15-minute discovery call and let's see how I can support your health journey, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Until next time, keep your faith strong, your gut happy, and your hope holistic.